Snow fell quietly over the broken battlefield, covering the bodies of soldiers who had fought until their last breath. The alien queen stood at the edge of the ruins, her fiery armor glowing against the cold night. Behind her, lightning split the sky, its thunder rolling like the drums of conquest. She raised her spear and looked down at the scattered human prisoners. Her voice was strong, sharp, and proud. "Humans are beneath me. They are beneath us all." The words carried across the frozen plain, repeated by her generals, carved into the minds of every survivor. For centuries, the alien empire had stretched across the stars, crushing every race that dared to resist. Humanity had been no different. At first, the empire had expected them to fall quickly. Their ships were fragile, their weapons weak, their numbers too small compared to the endless fleets of the Queen. Yet somehow they resisted. Somehow humans endured. On this night, the Queen had marched to the front lines herself to make an example. Her army had burned human cities, taken their strongholds, and scattered their fleets. To her, this was the final act of humiliation. The humans would be shown their place, and the galaxy would never again whisper of their defiance. But as she stood there, her eyes narrowed on one figure among the captured, a young man, bound in chains, bruised and bloodied from battle. Yet unlike the others who looked at the ground, he stared straight at her. His eyes held no fear, no submission, only defiance. The Queen tilted her head. "Do you not understand who I am?" she asked, her voice like thunder. The man's reply was quiet, but strong enough for all to hear. "I understand. You are afraid." The crowd of soldiers gasped. To speak such words before the Queen was death itself. The generals reached for their weapons, but she lifted her hand and silenced them. Her gaze sharpened as if trying to pierce the man's soul. "Afraid? I am the Queen of the Empire. I command fleets that can destroy worlds. What could I possibly fear?" she asked. The man, still chained, did not flinch. "You fear us. That is why you burn our homes. That is why you chain us. Because you know one day, humans will rise." The Queen felt her jaw tighten. His words struck with the force of a blade, and for the first time in centuries, she felt something unusual. Not anger, not hatred, but a flicker of something she had long buried: doubt. Lightning crashed again, painting the sky purple. The Queen turned sharply, hiding the brief tremor in her heart. She ordered her soldiers to march the prisoners back to the capital, but as they moved, her eyes lingered on the man. His gaze still locked on hers, unbroken, unafraid. Later, in the silence of her throne chamber, the Queen sat alone. The fires of war burned in her thoughts, yet one face haunted her, the human who dared to speak of fear. Why had she not killed him? Why had she stayed her hand? She could not answer, but whispers spread among her court. The humans, though scattered, were not broken. They fought with a spirit no weapon could destroy. And the Queen, though she denied it, had seen it with her own eyes. The war was far from over. And though she declared humans beneath her, a seed had been planted. A seed that would grow into something neither empire nor prophecy could stop. Asterisk. The march back to the alien capital was slow and cruel. The humans were bound in chains, forced to walk through the icy winds with alien soldiers at their backs. Every step was a reminder of defeat, every glance from their captors, a sting of humiliation. But among the prisoners, one man walked differently. His shoulders were not slumped. His head was not bowed. His eyes still carried fire. The Queen rode at the front of the column, her spear glowing faintly in the snowlight. She did not look back often, but when she did, her gaze always found him. She hated that she noticed him. She hated that his defiance lingered in her thoughts like an echo she could not silence. In the capital, the prisoners were thrown into the great square before the towering palace gates. Alien citizens gathered around, their voices rising in chants of victory. Children pointed at the humans as if they were animals. Priests of the empire lifted their voices, declaring the triumph of their queen. One priest, his robes glowing with threads of gold, stepped forward. "My queen, let us end this charade. These creatures are weak. Let us execute them and erase their shame from your sight." The queen raised her spear, her armor blazing in the light. The crowd hushed. "No," she said firmly. "Their death would be too easy. They will live to serve. They will carry chains as proof of their inferiority. That will be their punishment." The crowd erupted in approval, shouting her name. But as the prisoners were dragged away, the human man spoke again. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Chains do not break us. They only make us stronger." The crowd gasped. Silence spread like wildfire. The priests turned, their eyes wide with outrage. A soldier raised his weapon to silence him, but once more the queen lifted her hand. Her gaze locked on the man. "What is your name, human?" she demanded. He met her eyes without hesitation. "My name is nothing to you. To your kind, I am just one of many. But remember, these names are not needed for freedom. Only will." The queen's generals growled in anger, but she held them back. Something inside her was stirring again. His words should have been meaningless. Yet they were not. They carried weight. They carried truth. And truth, she realized, was dangerous. That night, in the palace halls, the queen walked alone. Her advisors whispered of betrayal. They said humans were poison, that this one man would infect others with rebellion if left alive. They begged her to kill him publicly, but she could not. Instead, she ordered the man brought to her chamber, bound in chains but alive. When he was dragged before her throne, he did not kneel. Even chained, even surrounded by guards, his back was straight, his eyes locked on hers. The queen descended from her throne, her fiery armor casting shadows on the walls. She circled him slowly, like a predator setting prey. "Why do you not bow?" she asked. Her voice was softer now, though steel remained beneath. "Because respect cannot be forced," he replied. "And you have not earned mine." Her steps paused. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No alien, no general, not even the council dared. Yet here stood a fragile human, chained and broken in body, but not in spirit. The queen leaned closer, her eyes burning into his. "You dare to challenge me with words when your people are dying in chains?" "I dare," he said, his voice steady, "because if even one of us refuses to bow, then we are not truly conquered." For a moment, the queen felt her heart falter. His defiance was not arrogance. It was strength. It was the same strength she had seen on the battlefield, the same strength that had unsettled her when he called her afraid. She turned away sharply, masking her unease. "You are a fool. Your defiance will not save you." "Maybe not," he answered, "but it will save others. Because they will see I did not break." His words followed her long after he was dragged back to the cells. That night, the queen lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her chamber. The chants of her people echoed outside, celebrating her victory. Yet inside her chest, something else echoed louder. The voice of a human, speaking truth she wished to deny. For centuries, she had believed humans were beneath her. Now one human's chains weighed heavier on her pride than any weapon ever could, and deep within her heart, though she would never admit it, she wondered if perhaps the prophecy was true. Her downfall would not come from her enemies, but from what she could not destroy. Not fear, not strength, but the stubborn spirit of humanity itself. The palace dungeons were cold, damp, and unforgiving. Prisoners were meant to rot in silence, broken by darkness and despair. Yet one cell remained different. Inside it, the human man still sat upright, his chains biting into his wrists, but his spirit unbroken. The guards whispered about him when the queen was not near. They could not understand why he lived. By all laws of the empire, He should have been executed for his words. But the queen had forbidden it. She had spared him again and again, and rumors began to spread. Whispers filled the court halls that their queen, the fiercest ruler of the stars, was curious about a human. Some even dared to say she respected him. Such whispers were dangerous, but they could not be silenced. The more she visited him, the more the rumors grew. Late at night, when the moonlight cut through the palace windows, the queen found herself standing before the dungeon gates. She dismissed the guards and entered alone. The heavy doors groaned shut behind her as she stepped into the human cell. He looked up from the shadows, his face bruised, his eyes steady. "You came again," he said, not as a question, but as if he had expected her. The queen's fiery armor glowed faintly, casting light across the stone walls. She studied him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You should fear me," she said at last. "I should," he agreed. "But I don't." Her jaw tightened. She had commanded fear across 1,000 worlds. Even kings and warlords trembled when she spoke. Yet this man, weak and chained, looked at her as if she were not a goddess of war, but only another soul. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Because fear is a choice," he answered. "And I will not give you that power." The queen turned her face away, hiding the flicker of something in her eyes. Anger? No, it was not anger. It was something far more dangerous. Something she could not name. "You are reckless," she said, regaining her sharpness. "Your defiance will lead you to death." "Then I will die free," he replied, his words carrying a strange calm. Silence filled the cell. The queen should have struck him down where he sat. She should have ended the insolence once and for all. But instead, she found herself sitting across from him. The cold stone pressed against her, a place no ruler of her empire should ever lower herself to. "Tell me," she said, her eyes narrowing, "what drives humans to fight so hard when you know you cannot win?" The man smiled faintly, though his face bore scars. "Because we don't fight only to win. We fight because it is right. We fight because freedom is worth more than life. You think us weak, but weakness is not what you see. What you see is will, and will cannot be conquered." His words sank deep into her chest like molten fire. She wanted to reject them, to mock them. Yet they stayed with her. The empire had conquered countless worlds, but none had resisted like the humans. Even in chains, they refused to bow. That night when she returned to her throne, the queen could not shake the human's voice from her mind. His spirit challenged everything she believed. And though she told herself it was curiosity, she knew it was more. Days turned into weeks, and still she visited him. Sometimes she asked questions about humanity, their families, their cities, their dreams. Sometimes they argued, her pride clashing against his unshaken belief. Yet in every word, she found herself listening more than speaking. The court grew restless. The priests muttered about corruption. The generals whispered about betrayal. But the queen ignored them. She was their ruler. None dared question her openly. Yet in the silence of the night, she felt the weight of their suspicion. Still, she returned to him. One evening, as storms raged outside the palace, the queen entered his cell once more. He looked weaker than before, his body suffering from captivity, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. "You could kill me," he said softly, "and still humans would rise. Do you understand that now?" The queen knelt before him, her spear resting against the wall. Her voice trembled, just for a moment. "I do not fear humans," she said, but the man shook his head. "No, you fear the truth." Her breath caught. For the first time in her life, the queen felt exposed, as if he could see into the depths of her soul. And though she was an alien queen of fire and war, she knew he was right. She feared not their weapons, not their numbers, but the truth that perhaps humanity was not beneath her at all. The The forbidden's connection between them grew in that silence, something fragile, something unspoken. A spark no chains could contain. And in the shadows of the Empire, destiny shifted. For from that connection would come a child neither alien nor human, but both. A child that would change the galaxy forever. The Empire was built on order. Every life had its place, every being its role, every race bound by the Queen's laws. But destiny does not obey laws. And in the silence of the palace, far from the eyes of her generals and priests, the Queen's life changed in a way no one in the galaxy could have imagined. Months passed since the human prisoner had first defied her. At first, she visited him out of curiosity, then out of anger, then, without admitting it, out of need. His words had struck something in her, something she had buried beneath centuries of conquest. And in return, she found herself speaking with him in ways she had never spoken with anyone. She had never trusted her counsel fully. They bowed, but behind their eyes was ambition. They praised her victories, but only because they feared her power. The human was different. He did not fear her. He did not flatter her. He only spoke truth. And for that, she found herself drawn closer, one night, when storms shook the palace and lightning lit the throne hall in pale fire. The Queen vanished from her court and walked to the hidden chamber where he was kept. Their words turned to silence, and silence turned into something deeper, something forbidden. What grew from that night was no longer just curiosity, nor even defiance. It was something both of them knew would change everything. And then it happened. The Queen, once unshaken by blade or fire, felt her strength falter as she carried life within her. It was not like any life before. The Empire's healers sensed it at once. Her child was different. His heartbeat carried an unfamiliar rhythm. His energy burned both alien and something more. Something human. Fear spread through the palace like wildfire. The priests whispered of heresy. The generals feared betrayal. The council demanded answers when the truth could no longer be hidden. The Queen stood before her throne, her hand resting against her stomach, and declared in a voice that shook the pillars of the palace, "My child is mine, my blood, my heir, and none will speak against him." But the council erupted in outrage. One of the priests stepped forward, his robe glowing faintly with symbols of the Empire. "This is an abomination, my Queen. A child of two worlds cannot be allowed. He carries weakness. He carries corruption. You must end it now." The Queen's spear struck the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. Her eyes blazed. "No, this child carries strength. A strength greater than any of you can imagine." But even as she spoke, she felt the weight of their stares. They did not believe her. They did not trust her. For centuries, she had ruled through fear, through fire, through iron, yet for the first time, her court looked at her with suspicion instead of obedience. When the day came, the palace trembled with whispers. The Queen gave birth under the watch of her most loyal guards, while the priests waited outside, ready to judge. The child's cry pierced the air, not like the wail of the alien-born, nor like the cry of a human infant. It was something in between, strong, steady, alive. The Queen held her child close, her fiery eyes softening for the first time in her long reign. His skin bore traces of both bloodlines. His eyes glowed faintly with the fire of her people, yet within them shone the clear resolve of humanity. "He is mine," she whispered, "and through him, the galaxy will change." But the council was not silent. Word spread across the Empire that the Queen had broken the oldest law, that she had united with what she once called inferior. Riots stirred in the outer colonies. Priests preached rebellion. Generals gathered their fleets in secret. The Empire was no longer unshaken. In the shadows of the throne hall, the human father was kept from the public eye. He was still a prisoner, still bound in chains, though the queen's guards no longer treated him as an enemy. And when the queen entered the chamber with the newborn in her arms, she placed the child into his hands. For the first time, the human's hardened eyes softened. He held the infant close, his chains clinking as he whispered, "He is hope." The queen stood beside him, her gaze fierce but her voice quiet. "No, he is more. He is the beginning." And in that moment, the truth became clear. The child was not a symbol of shame, nor of weakness. He was proof. Proof that humanity was not beneath her. Proof that strength could be found in unity. Proof that her empire's greatest law had already been broken by fate itself. But outside those walls, her enemies sharpened their blades. The priests vowed to destroy the child. The generals whispered of taking the throne. The court plotted in silence. The queen knew war was coming. Not against humans this time, but against her own empire. Yet as she stood with her child in her arms, she felt no fear. For she had fire, she had will, and now she had something greater than both. She had a child of two worlds. The Grand Council chamber had never felt so heavy. Dozens of alien lords sat in their seats, their eyes glowing with suspicion. Priests lined the walls, whispering prayers that dripped with venom. Generals stood at the edges in dark armor. Their hands close to their blades. At the center stood the queen, tall and proud, her fiery armor glowing faintly. In her arms, wrapped in black silk, lay the child who had become the spark of a storm. The council elder, a skeletal figure with skin like cracked stone, raised his voice. "My queen, you have broken the sacred law. You swore to keep our blood pure, yet you have birthed a creature half human, half alien. This thing cannot inherit your throne." The chamber erupted with shouts. Some demanded the child's death. Others whispered that the queen herself should be replaced. For the first time in centuries, her authority was not absolute. The queen struck her spear against the floor, and the sound silenced the chamber. Her voice carried like thunder. "This child is my heir. He is not weakness. He is the future." A priest stepped forward, his robes glowing. "No, my queen, he is a curse. Already the colonies stir in rebellion. Already your people question you. If you keep him, you will lose the empire." The queen's eyes blazed. "Then I will lose an empire built on lies." Gasps filled the chamber. Never before had their queen spoken such words. She had been the strongest, the most unyielding. Now she spoke as if the empire itself no longer mattered. The generals exchanged glances. The priests whispered among themselves. And then the elder's voice cut through again. "Then choose, my queen, the child or your crown." The chamber went silent. All eyes locked on her. Even her loyal guards shifted uneasily. To rule meant strength. To rule meant sacrifice. And now she was being asked to sacrifice the very thing she had sworn to protect. The queen looked down at her child, his tiny hands curling against her armor. His eyes, part alien fire, part human clarity, looked up at her without fear. And in that gaze, she saw more than blood. She saw the prophecy fulfilled. Her voice shook the chamber as she answered, "I choose him." The council erupted in fury. Priests cried out that she was a heretic. Generals shouted for her removal. The elder's eyes burned with rage. "Then you are no longer our queen." Blades were drawn. The guards closed in. The priests raised their staffs, glowing with dark energy. But before any strike could fall, the queen moved. Her spear burst into flame as she thrust it into the floor. The ground shook, cracks spreading across the marble. Her voice thundered over the chaos. "I am still your queen, and I will not surrender my child to cowards." The chamber shook with her fury. Soldiers hesitated. Some lowered their weapons, uncertain. Others raised them higher. Civil war was in the air, heavy and sharp like the storm before lightning. At that moment, The doors to the chamber burst open. Chains clinked as the human prisoner was dragged in by guards. His face was bruised, but his eyes were steady. The elder sneered. "Bring him forward. Let him witness the fall of his queen." But the queen's gaze locked on the man, and something inside her sparked brighter than ever. She raised her child high, her voice echoing through the chamber. "This man, whom you call inferior, whom you mock as weak, he is the father of my child. His will is stronger than all your armies. His spirit is what your empire fears. And it is through him that this child will lead us into a new age." The chamber froze. For the first time, the truth lay bare. The queen had not only defied her council, she had bound herself to a human, the very race she once called beneath her. The elder's face twisted with rage. "Then you are lost, and your empire with you." The priests raised their staffs again. The generals gave the order. Soldiers began to advance, but the queen did not retreat. She stood tall, her spear in one hand, her child in the other, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Then let it be trial by war. If you would take my throne, you must take it from my hands. But know this: humanity will fight with me. And so will any who dream of freedom." The human prisoner raised his head, meeting her gaze across the chamber. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. The council had drawn its line. The queen had chosen hers. The trial was no longer about laws or crowns. It was about survival. It was about a child who carried two worlds, and the war for the future of the galaxy had just begun. The empire burned. The council had declared the queen a traitor, and the priests cried for her death. Generals split their armies, half loyal to the throne, half ready to overthrow it. Across the stars, colonies rose in rebellion. For the first time in centuries, the empire's rule cracked, not because of an enemy fleet, but because of one child. The queen stood at the heart of her capital, her fiery armor glowing against the night sky. In one arm, she carried her spear. In the other, her child. Beside her stood the human, still bound in chains, but his eyes fierce and unbroken. The loyal soldiers gathered before her. They had seen her strength. They had heard her words. And though fear gripped them, they did not turn away. The queen raised her spear high, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "They call this child weakness. They call him shame. But I call him the future. Tonight, we fight not for thrones, not for crowns, but for truth. Humanity is not beneath us, they are with us." Her soldiers roared in answer. For the first time, the empire's army carried not just pride, but hope. The enemy came swiftly. The council's legions stormed the capital gates, their banners burning in the wind. The priests stood at the front, their staffs blazing with dark energy. Behind them, alien war machines rolled forward, their cannons glowing with fire. The queen placed her child into the arms of the human. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, silent but full of understanding. Then she stepped forward, her spear igniting like a star. The battle erupted. The queen fought like a storm made flesh. Her spear struck down machines. Her armor flared against blades. Her roar cut through the chaos. Every strike she made was not just for her crown but for the child, who bore both alien fire and human will. But she was not alone. The humans, once chained, broke free and joined the fight. With stolen weapons and desperate courage, they stood beside the queen's loyalists. For the first time in history, alien and human fought together, shoulder to shoulder. The council's armies faltered. They had numbers, but they did not have spirit. They had laws, but they did not have truth. The human father, still chained, fought with nothing but his hands and broken steel. Yet everywhere he struck, soldiers fell back, shaken by his defiance. At his side, the child, though too small to understand, was cradled in his arms, a symbol blazing brighter than any weapon. The priests, desperate, gathered their power into one final strike. Dark energy coiled above them, A storm meant to erase the queen and her child from existence. But the queen saw it. She planted her spear into the ground, its fire spreading like roots into the earth. The ground shook, flames bursting skyward, meeting the priest's storm head-on. For a moment, light and darkness clashed, the air splitting with power. And then, silence. The storm collapsed. The priests were thrown to the ground, their staffs shattered. The queen stood tall, her armor cracked, her body bloodied, but unbroken. Her child still lived. The council fled. The generals laid down their arms. Across the capital, voices rose not in rebellion, but in awe. The empire, once divided, had seen the truth with their own eyes. The queen lifted her child high, her voice carrying across the ruined square. This is not the end. This is the beginning. No longer shall we rule with chains. No longer shall we call humans inferior. From this day forward, we stand as one people, one future, one flame. The soldiers roared. The humans wept. And for the first time, hope spread across both races. In the days that followed, the queen rebuilt her empire. Not of fear, but of unity. The human father, once a prisoner, walked beside her as an equal. Their child, born of two worlds, was raised not as a symbol of shame, but as the bridge between them. And though the scars of war still marked the galaxy, a new era dawned. The queen, once feared as a tyrant, became remembered as the mother of peace. The human, once chained, became the first voice of freedom within her court. And the child, the one they all had tried to destroy, became the living proof that no race was beneath another, beneath the same stars that had once burned with war. Alien and human together built something greater than conquest. For in the end, it was not fire, nor crowns, nor armies that shaped the galaxy. It was a child of two worlds,